But they're going to say, I've got a $100 deductible now, what would I do with a $2,000 deductible? But what you'd do is you'd open prices. So instead of paying me $125 for an exam, it would open up to fluctuation. Now some doctors say, oh, we're not getting paid enough. I don't know, it might be being too much. We don't know if we're being paid too much or too little. Open it in the marketplace, and I have a feeling that prices would come down. You'd also have some more competition. You might have to have nurse practitioners being allowed to do some things. You might be allowing pharmacists to do some things, but you'd allow things to come down. But we do have a problem. Right now the problem's being dictated. President Obama says they're going to come up with this whole new government plan. The main thing they complain about is 45 million or 46 million don't have insurance. Well, who are these 46 million? There was a presentation to the Pennsylvania legislature the other day. A third of them make more than $50,000 a year. I don't know. I mean, maybe they could buy a high deductible plan if you make $50,000 a year. A third of them are eligible for Medicaid and haven't figured out how to get on it. Believe it or not, that's not uncommon. I have patients who come in, they need help and government's there to help. They can't figure out how to do the paperwork to get down there. And I'm not sure exactly why. 20% of them are not citizens. Or the way this report said, not Americans, and I assume that means not citizens. But the thing is, you know, if you come to this country and you want to come and you come in legal and you want to work, that's great. But you shouldn't come and expect that all of a sudden we're supposed to give you health insurance. So we have to say, well, how big is that problem of 46 million and how do we fix it? And are there ways to give either tax incentives to businesses to supply insurance or tax incentives to individuals to be able to purchase their own insurance? But the bottom line is it does make a difference to go ahead and be able to buy higher deductible. I'll give you an example. I'm a small businessman. I have 3 workers. I used to work for a consortium of 60 doctors, and our health insurance there was $12,000 per family. The employee paid $2,000. Well, I took 2 of the young ladies who worked with me there came with me to my new business. And I said, look, let's do a $1,500 deductible, but I'll give you $2,000 bonus to begin with. I'll give you $2,000 more. And we'll do a $1,500 deductible. Well, the price changed from, and you don't have to pay for your insurance at all. So they were paying $2,000 out of $12,000. They came to work for me and they paid $0. I gave them $2,000 extra, and the overall insurance bill was $4,000 for one for family coverage, and the other one's about $2,800. But they have a high deductible, and they have to pay, and they have to sort of budget their money and their time. And those are the solutions we have to figure out, and we have to figure out how to promote them either through the tax code or letting people do things. Going back to the bank bailout, we have to have answers to these things. We can't just blindly say one or the other. People say, well, it was caused by capitalism. We have 15 agencies at the cabinet level in Washington that the president oversees. 9 of those agencies regulate government. We have 73,000 pages in the Federal Register. For people to say it was capitalism that caused this crisis, they're not looking at how much of a mixed economy we have, how much government we already have. We have to assess the blame where the blame deserves in order to come forward. And why it's important, I was telling this gentleman a minute ago, is that with the Great Depression, we lost the debate. Most of us who read our history books or economic books in high school or junior high or whatever, when we read those books, it blamed the Great Depression on either the gold standard or capitalism. We lost that debate. We have to win the debate intellectually, but we also have to win the debate politically. Some would say, well, there's going to be a lot of other candidates in your race who will be either better known, better looking probably, or richer, or better connected. That's probably, all of those things are true. But I think what Republicans need, Republican Party is dwindling. I went around the country for my dad and spoke in 10 different states. Every state, bar none, I would tell them the real message isn't who your candidate's going to be. The message is how small your party's becoming. The Republican Party is shrinking. Polls recently said 20% of people want to align themselves as Republicans. So we have to, I don't think we have to give up our message. I think we need to present our message in a way that shows that things like capitalism are the greatest humanitarian economic system ever known to man. In the Soviet Union, they showed a propaganda film many years ago. It was of a tenement building in New York City, and they wanted to show how horrible capitalism was and how we had such great poverty in our country and they were so much better off. The windows were broken and it was kind of a shabby building. But the propaganda film failed because the Soviets looked closely and they could see all the little color television sets flickering in all the windows. In the Soviet Union, very few people had television sets, and everybody in the poorest tenement in New York City had a television set. So the poorest of our poor have done better than they have done in countries that have socialism. or in countries that have no capitalism because the ownership is by a ruling elite. So we have to be able to present our message better. I think there are ways. I think there are two ways that a Senate candidate could win in Kentucky. We have seen Republicans who run simply as Democrats. You just say, well, the Republican message isn't any good, I'll run as a Democrat, meaning I'll run on a message that says, you know what, I can get you more federal projects than the Democrats can because I have more seniority. We've seen that kind of message happen, and sometimes it works and wins. That to me is not worth it. I wouldn't drive all the way up here or anywhere across the state because I think we just get more federal projects as Republican and our party is so much better than the Democrat Party. We're only better if we believe in something or if we stand for something. The Republican Party's lost its way. You know, I think we've lost what I would call believability. We used to be for balanced budgets. Reagan was for getting rid of the Department of Education. Whatever happened to that? Under George Bush, we doubled the size of the Department of Education through No Child Left Behind. We doubled the number of employees. What else did we do under the Bush administration? We gave them Medicare prescription drug plan. Largest entitlement program since LBJ. What else did we do under the Bush administration? We doubled the size of the debt, went from $5 to $10 trillion. Obama recognizes this and he looks at us and he says, or looks at Republicans and says, who are you to criticize me about the deficit? You doubled the deficit when you were in charge. We've lost our credibility. The only way we get our credibility back, I think, is you need outsiders, newcomers, people who haven't been part of the Washington system, people who have other careers. If I lose, it's not the end of the world. In fact, I'm not sure which way my wife's going to vote yet on this thing anyway. So, you know, it's a big sacrifice to do things like this. But I'm going to go out and tell it like it is or like I see it. I'm not going to be Santa Claus. I'm not going to promise people I'm going to get you a free job, a project from government, or anything for free. I'm going to promise you that we'll try to get the government out of the way and let you do what you can do best. And I think we need to do this. We are at a point where the deficit is enormous. The deficit this year will be 13% of the gross national product. This is the largest deficit we've had. I think it's larger now as a percentage than we had during World War II. Federal spending is now 28% of the gross national product. Largest amount of federal spending as a percentage of the gross national product ever. We are drowning in a sea of debt, and some people recognize this and they say our kids and our grandkids will pay this. That's true, but I think it's much closer than that. I think we'll all be paying for the deficit within 1 to 2 years through significant inflation. Some of you probably remember 1979. I remember it because I was a kid mowing lawns and my dad was involved, and I always liked listening and trying to get involved with investments. So when I took my lawn mowing money in 1979, my dad was buying gold stocks. I bought in gold stocks. Also, for the first time, learned about a money market fund back then, and interest rates were rising so fast. I remember having money, a couple $100 in a money market fund making 18%. Of course, the money was losing about that much too, so you're about breaking even. But we have to look at what's going to come. I think we're going to get 1979 on steroids. And if you're trying to plan for your future and you've seen your savings wiped out by the stock market plunge, you have to think about that. And I think everyone should have a percentage of their savings in gold. Now, I'm not out here to be a financial planner to tell you to take all your money and dump it in gold, but I would have a percentage in there, because if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, if we have complete catastrophe, if we have what happened in the Weimar Republic where people were walking around with wheelbarrows full of cash, where the workers demanded being paid twice a day because by noon they wanted to be paid because by 5 p.m. it would be worth less. If we have something like that happen, if we have total destruction of the currency, you need to be prepared in some way. Other things I think that you can invest in that will rise in inflationary times, oil. You know, so, and you can buy them through mutual funds. I don't really own gold coins. I don't own oil or rich enough to own oil wells. You can buy these things through mutual funds as well. But I would be prepared. I think there's a coming calamity possibly. And I'm not been a doomsayer. I'm not someone who generally believes that the end of the world's coming. But I think I would be prepared, because anybody who's seen what's happened in the last 6 months, it might already have been doom for many people what's happened. One final thing I'd like to close on is that as Republicans, it's been very easy for us to say we're fiscally conservative and we're for balanced budgets. But it's never happened. We were in charge during the Reagan term, the next Bush's term, this last Bush. The deficits were horrendous under the Republicans. You have to ask yourself why. Well, many Republicans just want to apologize. So we say, oh, well, we had a war here, war there, this, that, the Cold War. Every time the answer is not just war of the military. Domestic spending goes up. During Reagan's 2 terms, Domestic spending.